Hi everyone, for tbrick.com. We are sitting with Mark from Adobe. Mark, could you just give us a quick introduction as to what you do at Adobe?
Sure. So I'm Mark, and I work in the developer relations team at Adobe. So we are a global team. Many of us travel the world meeting with developers, big brands and media companies, and helping them to be successful with Adobe products. And we're here in Dubai with RIM for Meet the Playbook. So this is an opportunity for people to learn about Flash and Adobe Air on the Playbook.
Now, from what I understand, Playbook has a lot of different ways for development. They've got, obviously, Adobe Air. They've got their native SDK coming up. They've got their Java player as well. Android apps can be sort of converted as well. So why would anyone use Adobe Air on the Playbook?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So I think Air is great for, in our view, just about everything. There are some exceptions where people have extremely large code bases, maybe written in Java. Maybe they want to get their app to run on the smartphones, or bring a BlackBerry smartphone app to work on the Playbook. Maybe they just don't have the money or time to invest in a really stunning user experience. There are some examples, like someone wants to create like a kick-ass 3D driving game, and they need like directly on the metal performance. Then that's a reason for using OpenGL. But for the most part, our expectation is that people will and can adopt Adobe Air because it provides them with the cross-platform reach that doesn't really exist for other platforms as part of the Playbook. So, if you want to create an application based on Flash or using the open source Flex framework, you can use our tools to build an application that runs on the Apple devices, on all of the Android devices, as well as the Playbook and the television and the set-top boxes and all of these various places, and do that from a single code base using the same tools, and have what we believe to be the opportunity to create the best user experience and do that consistently.
Traditionally, there's been a view of, if you don't use native development tools, your performance kind of slows down a little bit. And you mentioned that if you want to develop a high-end 3D kind of game, you really need bare metal access to the hardware. But I mean, for a general application, what is the performance hit, or is there any when building for the Playbook specifically? Is there any performance hit, or no? It's just
Flash works, and I'll try not to scare you with too much technical jargon. But basically, when Flash gets published by a developer, it turns into this thing called a SWF file, SWF, and that's what you see stuck on the internet, playing videos, etc. But before Flash plays that SWF file, it actually turns that into ones and zeros that run on your desktop computer. So it's running native at that point, and that's a process that we call just-in-time compilation. So that works on Windows, Mac, Linux, and other devices. And what we wanted to do was bring that to mobile as well, so you end up with this amazing performance. So we invented something new called the NanoJIT, which sounds really impressive, but basically what it means is that we're getting as much performance as a native application would, and if not better, for some use cases. So Flash playing video on most devices will be better than the native video player and use less energy doing it. And the only exception to this rule is on the iOS platform, where basically we take that SWF file and we compile it into ones and zeros before it goes on the device, rather than when someone runs it on the device, in the case of Android, etc. And that's what we call cross-compiling. The advantage with that is that it meets with Apple's policies, first of all. It enables you to create a really great user experience, as well as gain access to all of these other platforms at the same time.
Okay. You mentioned Apple, and I mean, they're pretty anti-Flash on one side, and then you've got the Playbook, which has pretty much got Flash integrated in its core. How do you see, the big gap between these two tablets, and what are your thoughts on that?
I think to be clear, I can't speak for Apple. I think that they made it abundantly clear that they wanted to ensure that the success of their own platform by restricting people to using certain technologies. But it was really clear, I think, certainly a year ago, that big production houses like Electronic Arts, building these incredible games. They were doing that with technologies like Lua and the Unity runtime. These are, I guess, if you thought about it a lot, you could say they're Flash competitors in the gaming space. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I think from that perspective, from customer perspective, there were obvious exceptions to this rule that actually Flash wasn't so good and whatever. I think ultimately we've demonstrated that Flash works exceptionally well across devices. We've done that using Android. We've really smashed it out of the park when it comes to the playbook. Things work absolutely brilliant there. So I think that we'll see more applications reaching onto the iOS platform that probably started on the playbook, or maybe they started on Android. Just to put it in perspective, the #1 game in the App Store in China right now is actually built using Flash.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does HTML5 scare Adobe, or no? I mean, it's just something.
Only because we're so desperate to get stuff out the door. I think everyone's looking to us to deliver on HTML5 because they need like amazing tools. They need those tools to give them the type of, I guess, the type of like, beautiful graphics and control that they need over their pixel perfect layouts. So if you think about like a publishing industry guy like creating a magazine, in his or her world, they're using Adobe InDesign and they're laying everything out with precision. And if that goes to the printer and there's like a letter out of place, like there's tears, like it's upsetting for someone like that. So the idea of like, putting their magazine on a tablet computer, and things all sort of not looking perfect, that's not fun. So those publishing customers are looking to us to help them deliver in HTML5 format, but also enable the rendering, the end result that hits the consumer to look absolutely stunning, and that's hard. So we have work to do, but we have published a number of updates to our tools in the upcoming Creative Suite, the already released Creative Suite 5.5, and in there we have support for HTML5 in Dreamweaver, some support for that in InDesign, and really just across the board we've enabled support for it, and that will only get better. We're making huge contributions to WebKit with our CSS regions technology. We're helping out with jQuery. We've added support for PhoneGap in Dreamweaver. So I think anyone building HTML applications, specifically for mobile and devices as well, are going to have a really fun time using Adobe tools.
You briefly mentioned 2.7 Adobe Air. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is a really great release, one of the most exciting ones. The goal of the Open Screen project, where we got all these OEMs to agree that keeping the Flash and Air runtimes up to date, keeping that accessible on devices. When we had them agree, the whole idea was that everything stayed up to date, and it was done within a very small period of time. Like on the web today, on desktop computers, like within about 3 months, we can make sure that maybe 70 or 80% of all internet connected computers have the latest version of Flash and Air. Now, it would all be useless if we couldn't do that on mobile devices. So what we found was it was a little harder than we assumed. So we had to go from bringing Android to ship readiness, and then we went from bringing the playbook to ship readiness, and then Android tablets came along, and all of these things are happening in parallel, and we're trying to do our best to get them to happen. It hasn't worked out perfectly, I'm not going to lie, but when we get to Air 2.7, for the first time, all of the platforms will be running all of the same version, which I think is a really great time. So it means that if you create a Flex-based application, for an enterprise customer, and get that working on the iPad, that it'll naturally, and without making any changes, it'll work again on the playbook, and it'll work on Android tablets, Android phones, your iPod, absolutely anything where it's supported, like including the desktop.
And the application scales accordingly, whichever device
Absolutely.
you're using on the UI side.
Yeah, absolutely. It just does the business as far as Flex is concerned. Now, if you want to build like a more creative application, animation, game, or something like that, then you'll have to do some more of that grunt work yourself. But actually, it's not that difficult. You just need to know a few calculations and keep applying them over and over when an application launches and runs. So I think some of the new features that arrived in Air 2.7 is all of these optimizations that we needed to enable Flex to work really fluidly on devices. We had a couple of performance bottlenecks around things like text rendering, and we had to cache things so that when you scroll on a list of items, that you end up with that really nice kinetic scrolling.
Right.
If you wanted the little bounce at the bottom of a list or something like that, so that it feels to the end user like a native experience, like a bit more of a natural experience. One other feature that I remember on the desktop was acoustic echo cancellation, which is an amazing feat in itself. But what this means is that people who are creating like voice over IP platforms, not just like that app I was showing earlier when I had like my face camera and I broadcast that to my desktop computer from the Playbook. It's not just that; it's people being able to have like complete conversations in high quality. But to do that without using headphones and things that would naturally reduce the echoes that would happen, feedback loops and things that happen on devices.
But wouldn't that require something on the hardware level as well, on the manufacturer?
So in the case of mobile hardware, it's already there. I mean, because otherwise it just wouldn't work. You'd have really horrible phone calls. But in the case of desktops, you don't have that. That's why every time you turn your volume up with the microphone, it's like woo, woo, and you don't want that. So Flash, we're now breaking that in for the desktop so people can have those engaging conversations. I think it's really exciting. That's my favorite feature.
All right, wonderful. So now, I believe that the Facebook app on Playbook has been developed using Air. Yeah. One of the things I noticed is that it doesn't render Arabic properly in that app. So is Unicode or RTL support going to be part of 2.7 as well?
So it absolutely is part of Flex and Air in general, and Flash. As a platform. I'm very surprised that it doesn't work. It may be a number of things. My best guess is that the font doesn't support it rather than Flash. Okay. Usually the first failure point for displaying multi-byte or complex languages is the font, unfortunately. So if they've chosen a font that doesn't support Arabic for the platform, then unfortunately that's just the way it goes. It's the type of thing you should definitely report it. Unfortunately, I don't get to see much Arabic in my Facebook application, so I would definitely like to see it, and we'll see if we can get it fixed.
Absolutely. Well, last question for you. How do you envision the mobile space 2 years from now? I mean, it's just a very fast-moving platform, so I can't say 5 years, because I'm pretty sure that everything's going to change in the next couple of years. I think RIM has brought TAT on board as well for their user interface, which I think is a great thing. But I mean, as far as Adobe is concerned and mobile applications are concerned, what is what's the nirvana for you guys?
I think it's really seeing people be successful and in the context of delivering their application across devices. I think ubiquity is something that's coming, where your watch and your shoes and your coat, your coat in the future at some point will probably know that it's raining. It might be able to not do anything about that, like it might change color so that you're like more visible. Your umbrella should know it's raining or hot. Maybe it could change color and protect you from the sun in some conditions. I think that level of ubiquity is something that everyone thinks may happen, but we just don't know what to do about it yet. I'd really like to see better cameras on phones. I think quite often we're sold this idea of like, 12 megapixel, it's amazing, but then you take a photo when you're out with your friends and like you can't see anyone. Like, that doesn't make a great Facebook profile, all these dark photos. So I'd love to see that type of thing fixed. I think it will be. And I think in general, from Adobe's perspective, we're really looking forward to seeing, especially our publishing customers. They've had a rough ride for the last 5 years. I hope that at that point we have found a way to help them be more successful, taking that print industry into new environments, help them go digital, and then take it to the next level. And I think what we've got to so far is enabling them to take advantage of a small number of cool features that are a bit more digital, like movement, like video and stuff like that. But what happens after that? Like, how do you collaborate? What does a magazine look like that actually is all about you? Like, can you have your own magazine? I think that's really interesting.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
and best of luck.